Insecurity, a silent, relentless barrier that traps us in cycles of doubt and fear, stealing away our peace and clarity. This isn't just a feeling. It's a battle within, a storm where our mind wavers between anxiety and the desperate search for control. Daniel's story vividly unfolds this struggle, not through grand external victories, but through a profound inner awakening. He discovers that the true conquest over insecurity doesn't come from showing off strength or perfection to the world, but from embracing an unflinching truth. Authenticity, raw and unapologetic, is the real power. Stoicism teaches us that insecurity isn't a flaw to hide, but a universal human experience to accept. This acceptance is the key that unlocks emotional freedom, breaking the chains of limiting beliefs that skew how we see ourselves and the world. By stepping outside the comfort zones that fear builds, Daniel learns to act despite trembling, to reject the mirage of perfection that stalls growth and compassion. The power lies in living fully in the present moment, honoring our own values, not the impossible expectations of others. Facing fears head-on with intention transforms life into a continuous journey of learning and quiet victories. Each step forward, however small, chisels away at insecurity's grip, helping us shape a life grounded in wisdom, courage, and genuine self-worth. When we choose to own our minds, we don't just survive, we truly live. If this is making sense to you so far, take a moment to like the video and share it with someone who truly needs to hear this message. It helps this wisdom reach more minds seeking clarity and inner strength in a world that often demands we be anything but ourselves. We left Daniel at a pivotal point, on the cusp of an inner awakening, realizing that authenticity, raw and unapologetic, was his real power. He understood that insecurity wasn't a flaw to hide, but a universal human experience to accept, a key that could unlock emotional freedom. But knowing this intellectually is one thing. Truly living it is another. The path from understanding to embodying these truths is where the real work of Stoicism begins, transforming abstract philosophy into tangible, everyday resilience. Daniel's journey became less about eliminating insecurity entirely, a futile and exhausting endeavor, and more about changing his relationship with it. He began to see insecurity not as an adversary to be vanquished, but as a messenger, a signal that he was likely operating outside his circle of control, or perhaps measuring his worth against external unreliable metrics. This shift in perspective was the first profound step, an application of what the Stoics called the dichotomy of control. Consider this fundamental Stoic teaching. Some things are within our control, and others are not. Our opinions, impulses, desires, and aversions, these are ours. The opinions of others, our reputations, our health, wealth, or the outcome of our efforts, these are largely outside our direct control. Insecurity often flourishes precisely in the space where we mistakenly believe we should control the uncontrollable, where we desperately try to manage how others perceive us, or where we attach our self-worth to external validation. For Daniel, this meant a radical reevaluation. He used to spend hours agonizing over what his colleagues thought of his presentations, replaying conversations, dissecting every glance and inflection. He'd craft his emails with an almost obsessive desire to avoid any possible misinterpretation or criticism. This wasn't just perfectionism. It was a desperate attempt to control the uncontrollable, the minds and judgments of others. Applying the dichotomy of control, Daniel slowly, deliberately, began to disentangle his sense of self from these external reactions. He started to focus solely on what was in his control, preparing thoroughly, speaking clearly and honestly, and presenting his ideas with integrity. The outcome, whether his colleagues liked his idea, praised his delivery, or even criticized his approach, became, as Epictetus would say, indifferent. Not in the sense of not caring about his work, but indifferent to its impact on his inherent worth. This didn't mean he stopped striving for excellence. On the contrary, by releasing the burden of external validation, he found a purer motivation, the desire to do good work for its own sake, to contribute meaningfully, and to align his actions with his values. He learned that true strength doesn't come from a flawless performance, but from the resilience to do your best, accept the outcome, and learn from it, regardless of external reception. It was a liberation from the tyranny of other people's opinions, which, as Marcus Aurelius reminds us, are often capricious and ultimately irrelevant to our own inner peace. Another powerful Stoic practice Daniel embraced was premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. This isn't about wallowing in negativity or inviting misfortune. It's about intellectually confronting potential difficulties and imagining how one would cope. Insecurity thrives on the unknown, on the imagined worst-case scenarios that feel so terrifying precisely because they haven't been brought into the light of conscious reflection. For Daniel, this meant actively visualizing those situations where his insecurity usually flared up. Before a challenging meeting, instead of just dreading it, he would calmly consider, what's the worst that could happen? Someone might disagree with me. I might stumble over my words. I might not get the promotion. And then, crucially, he would ask himself, if that happens, how would I respond? What Stoic principles would I apply? Would I still be a person of integrity? Would my core values be compromised? This exercise, far from increasing anxiety, actually diminished it. By mentally rehearsing his responses, he stripped away the element of surprise and the overwhelming emotional charge. He realized that even if the worst happened, he possessed the internal resources, his reason, his character, his ability to learn, to navigate it. The fear of failure, which had so often paralyzed him, began to recede because he understood that failure was just an event, not an indictment of his worth. He could, as the Stoics teach, convert potential adversity into an opportunity for demonstrating virtue, patience in criticism, courage in disagreement, resilience in setback. This allowed him to act despite trembling, not because the fear vanished entirely, but because he had prepared his mind to meet it. Understanding its transient nature, he started to see that many of his insecurities were simply a lack of preparedness for what might happen, and by preparing his mind, he disarmed a significant portion of their power. This brings us to the profound concept of amor fati, a love of fate. This doesn't imply passive resignation to whatever comes our way, but rather an active, robust acceptance, even an embrace of all that happens, the good, the bad, and the indifferent, as necessary threads in the tapestry of our lives. For someone grappling with insecurity, amor fati is revolutionary. Insecurity often stems from a rejection of some part of ourselves or our circumstances. We wish we were smarter, more attractive, wealthier, more articulate, less prone to anxiety. We resist the reality of who we are and what we've experienced. Daniel had long struggled with a profound sense of not being enough. He saw his past mistakes as indelible stains, his perceived weaknesses as insurmountable barriers. Amor Fati taught him to stop fighting against the facts of his own history and temperament. It wasn't about excusing past errors, but about accepting that they happened and that they were part of his journey, shaping him into who he was. He learned to look at his moments of insecurity, his stumbles, his awkwardness, and say, "This is me. This is what happened. And I will use this. I will integrate this. I will find the lesson in this." This wasn't a passive acceptance of mediocrity. It was an active reframe. His past insecurities became opportunities to practice courage. His moments of social awkwardness became lessons in humility and empathy. He began to see that his perceived imperfections were not flaws to be hidden, but unique aspects of his humanity, parts of the complete self that he could choose to embrace, not reject. This radical acceptance freed up immense energy that was previously consumed by self-criticism and wishing things were different. It allowed him to move forward with a unified self, rather than constantly battling against internal dissent. He recognized that true strength wasn't about being flawless, but about being whole, integrating every part of his experience, good and bad, into a robust and resilient self. Central to Stoicism and to Daniel's transformation is the idea of virtue as the sole good. The Stoics identified 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, prudence, good judgment, courage, endurance, resilience, justice, fairness, benevolence, and temperance, self-control, moderation. Insecurity often arises when we seek good in external things: approval, possessions, status, or a perfect body. When these external goods are threatened or unattainable, our sense of worth plummets. Daniel gradually shifted his focus from these external metrics to cultivating internal virtues. Instead of seeking validation for his intelligence, he focused on practicing wisdom, applying good judgment in his decisions, seeking understanding, and discerning what truly mattered. Instead of shrinking from difficult conversations, he cultivated courage, speaking his truth, facing uncomfortable truths, and acting despite his fear. Instead of comparing his career trajectory to others, he practiced justice, treating everyone with fairness, contributing to the greater good, and living with integrity. And instead of being swayed by every fleeting desire or external pressure, he embraced temperance, exercising self-control in his reactions, moderating his impulses, and finding contentment in what he had. This wasn't an overnight change. It was a conscious, daily practice. Each decision, no matter how small, became an opportunity to choose virtue over external gratification or the avoidance of discomfort. When he felt the familiar pang of insecurity, he would pause and ask himself, what is the virtuous thing to do here? What would a wise person do? A courageous person? A just person? A temperate person? By anchoring his actions and his self-worth to these internal, unshakable virtues, Daniel discovered a profound and unwavering sense of dignity. He realized that his worth wasn't contingent on a promotion, a compliment, or a perfect presentation. It was inherent in his character and his persistent effort to live virtuously. This was the foundation of genuine self-worth, a self-worth that could withstand the shifting sands of external circumstance. The Stoic concept of memento mori, remember that you must die, might seem morbid to some, but for Daniel, it became a powerful antidote to procrastination and the endless pursuit of an elusive, perfect moment to act. Insecurity often tells us to wait, to prepare more, to refine ourselves before we are ready to face the world. It's a subtle form of paralysis, convincing us that there's always a better, safer time. But with memento mori, Daniel was reminded of the precious, finite nature of his time. He began to internalize that each moment he spent paralyzed by doubt, each opportunity he let slip due to fear of imperfection, was a moment irrevocably lost. This didn't create a frantic urgency, but rather a quiet, resolute determination. It gave him permission to act now, even imperfectly, knowing that the journey itself was the point, not some mythical, flawless arrival. He started to understand that growth happens in the messy, imperfect process of living and doing, not in the sterile, imagined perfection of inaction. This awareness naturally led him to a deeper appreciation for mindfulness and the present moment. The Stoics, long before modern mindfulness movements, emphasized the importance of living fully in the now. Insecurity often drags us into the past, regretting mistakes, replaying embarrassing moments, or projects us into the future, dreading outcomes, worrying about what might happen. Both states pull us away from the only moment we truly have, the present. Daniel consciously practiced bringing his attention back to the task at hand, to the conversation he was having, to the sensory details of his immediate environment. When his mind started to wander into anxious predictions or self-critical reruns, he would gently but firmly redirect it. He found that by focusing his attention entirely on the present, the clamor of insecure thoughts diminished. He became more effective in his work, more present in his relationships, and more attuned to the quiet joys of daily life. This wasn't about suppressing thoughts. It was about acknowledging them, and then choosing where to place his attention. A choice always within his control. This practice strengthened his mental muscles, making him less susceptible to being hijacked by intrusive, insecurity-fueled narratives. He recognized that the power to live fully meant the power to fully inhabit the current moment, honoring his own values in each breath, each decision. Finally, Daniel learned the profound Stoic lesson of objective representation. Our insecurity isn't often about reality itself, but about the story we tell ourselves about reality. Our minds, left unchecked, have a tendency to layer emotions, judgments, and dramatic narratives onto neutral facts. A colleague's terse email isn't just a terse email. It becomes proof they dislike me. A project setback isn't just a setback. It becomes proof I'm incompetent. The Stoic practice here is to strip away these judgments and emotions, to see things as they are. Marcus Aurelius famously urged us to ask, is it really that bad? Or what is this thing in itself? Daniel began to consciously detach from his initial emotional reactions and try to see situations objectively. When he felt a surge of insecurity, he would consciously pause and analyze the raw data. Was there concrete evidence for his fear, or was it just a feeling, a story? Often, he found, it was just a story. The colleague's email might have been terse because they were busy, not angry. The project setback might have been due to unforeseen circumstances, not a personal failing. This practice of objective representation didn't make him emotionless, but it made him less controlled by his emotions. It gave him the mental space to respond rationally, rather than react impulsively from a place of fear. He realized that much of his insecurity was a product of his own internal narrative. And by challenging that narrative, he could literally rewrite his experience of the world. This was the ultimate act of owning his mind, taking responsibility for his perceptions and interpretations, and thereby gaining true emotional freedom. Daniel's transformation wasn't a sudden dramatic event, but a continuous journey of learning and quiet victories. Each time he spoke up, despite his fear. Each time he accepted a criticism without internalizing it as a personal attack. Each time he chose to act virtuously, over seeking external approval, he chipped away at insecurity's grip. He found that true courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in its presence. He learned to reject the mirage of perfection that had stalled his growth and limited his capacity for compassion, both for himself and for others. He began to understand that a life grounded in wisdom, courage, and genuine self-worth wasn't about achieving a flawless state of being, but about consistently striving to live in accordance with reason and virtue. It was about recognizing that his worth was intrinsic, not something to be earned or validated by the fleeting opinions of others. When he chose to honor his own values, not the impossible expectations of others, he didn't just survive, he truly began to live. He found a quiet strength, a profound peace that wasn't dependent on external circumstances, but on the unwavering integrity of his own character. The profound insight from Stoicism is this: you cannot control the world outside you, but you possess absolute dominion over the world within. You are the architect of your own inner citadel, and no external force can breach its walls unless you grant it entry. Insecurity is merely an illusion, a trick of the mind that suggests your worth is tied to something outside your control. But your worth, your dignity, your peace, these are yours to define, yours to cultivate, and yours to protect through the consistent practice of virtue and reason. As the great Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, freedom is not procured by a full enjoyment of what is desired, but by controlling the desire itself. For us, battling insecurity, this means freedom isn't found by finally achieving that perfect body, that ideal job, or universal approval. It's found in liberating ourselves from the desire for these things to define us, to give us worth. It's found in the radical realization that our worth is already complete, a gift of our rational nature, waiting to be expressed through our actions, our choices, and our unwavering commitment to our own integrity. So, I invite you to reflect. What aspect of your life is insecurity currently holding hostage? What external validation are you chasing that is distracting you from your true, inherent worth? And what single small step can you take today, drawing on these Stoic principles, to reclaim a piece of your inner freedom? Don't let the noise of the world or the whispers of your own doubt drown out the quiet, unwavering strength that resides within you. Own your mind, and you will own your life. If this video resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel for more insights like this, and leave a comment below sharing your thoughts or any Stoic practice that has helped you on your journey. Your experience might be the very encouragement someone else needs.